Real Talk Corner.
Real Entertainment Network.
Reese. The talk is still real. We still on the corner. We gonna touch on some topics.
SKN. We got topics. Let's have a discussion. The people got questions. The people want answers. Yeah. We got topics. Let's have a discussion. The people got questions. The people want answers. Yeah. It's real talking. It's real talk. It's real talking. It's real talk. It's real talking. Real talk. It's real talking. Real talking.
Well, Reese, how's it
What's
going?
going on, my brother?
Good,
Good man,
good,
what's up?
good. Usual, you know. Actually, a bit unusual.
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
different for us,
yeah. It's a
but nonetheless, it is what it is. We do what we do.
back to the original.
This is where it all started.
Yeah, back to the original.
Wednesday nights at 7:15.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So,
Yes, man.
hope all is well with you.
Yes, man.
And
Everything's good on my end. Me and the family. Hope everything's good with you as well.
yes, definitely. So, you're gonna tell the people who we have tonight?
But in order for us to change, the time of our show and the day that we do our show, there has to be a reason. And tonight, the reason is going to be the leader of the Nevis Reformation Party,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Daniel-Hodge.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Hodge is going to be here with us, as we know that the NRP would have recently announced their candidates going into the federal election. So we'll speak to Dr. Hodge about a few things, including the federal election, the local election that's around the corner, her plans, her time as leader thus far. And we just have a great conversation with Dr. Daniel-Hodge. So without further ado, we would like to bring Dr. Hodge on screen with us.
As well as Alan Powell. We can't forget
And
Alan
Alan,
Powell.
yes. My bad, my bad. I was not looking at the screen to see Alan. My bad, my bad, my bad. My bad. I didn't realize that my brother had joined already.
Oh yes. He was there. He was there. Okay, so good evening all. Good evening, Dr. Daniel-Hodge. Um, good evening,
Good
Alan.
evening.
It's Real Talk Corner, and we're ready. You know what I mean, Alan. That color is going to need a little touching up,
Yeah. Good man.
but um, we know we know why we're about to have this discussion. It's all in the ear of St. Kitts and Nevis. There is a snap federal election brewing. We all know it's just constitutionally due sometime in August, but it can be called at any point in time as the parliament has already been dissolved. Well, I guess they have to announce it in 2 weeks, and there's some more things. But this is why Dr. Janice Daniel-Hodge is here with us tonight. We were expecting to have a discussion with her surrounding a local election, maybe sometime this year, maybe early next year. We don't know. But, she's here tonight, and of course, she's representing her party, the NRP. And I would just have her say hello to the audience before we get into the discussion.
Thank you, Ira. I just want to say good evening to you, Reese, and of course, Alan. Looks like a very interesting trio. And good evening to all the folks here at home in St. Kitts and Nevis, especially, of course, now Nevis 11. And to my family and friends at home and abroad, just want to say happy good evening. I've been doing quite a bit of talking over the last couple of weeks, and so I feel honored to be back here. I can recall just after being elected leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, you guys invited me. I think this was probably one of the first shows I would have appeared on after becoming leader, and so I'm quite happy and honored to be back here again. Glad you didn't want to, glad you wanted to have this opportunity so that we can see where we are now and in which direction we will be heading. So, good evening to everyone, and it's my pleasure to be here again.
All right. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna start off with just the simple stuff. How is the campaigning going? You know, how are your campaigning going?
Campaigning is going along smoothly. Of course, as we mentioned, we would have started out in anticipation of a local election, and due to maybe a bit of misbehavior, SARS got dismissed in the federal election and in the federal assembly a bit early, and so now we have had to shift gears a bit and refocus now on the federal election. And so we would have launched the candidates for our, well, we have launched our federal campaign just this past Friday evening, and we're already out having public meetings and really still listening to the concerns that people have, and it's really one big concern in Ibis, that the cost of living is not going down, the bills and the taxes are getting higher, and something must be done. There must be some change. We cannot continue on this trajectory, and so we here recognize that not only in the NIA do we need to make some changes, but also in the federal government as well.
All right. So, let's start with the biggest concern on the people's mind: the cost of living. I mean, of course, you vying to be elected member of parliament. I'm pretty sure you have some ideas how you would tackle the rising costs of living. We see it globally, so I'm interested to know what we could do locally to fight the costs.
Well, here in Nevis, for a very long time, like in the 70s and the 80s, the leaders of Nevis at that time, they had the intention to take Nevis into secession. And so quite a bit of work was being done in order to try to make sure that Nevis could be self-reliant and to make sure that we could handle our own affairs here in Nevis. And so with regards to the economy and what we have been able to do, that was one area. But right now, based on where we are and what we have to look at, it's really the issues that we're looking at. One of the major issues has to do with the cost of doing business, the cost of maintaining a home, and that has to do with the cost of electricity. Now, we know that we started the geothermal exploration project, and we recognize that project has not advanced under the CCM, and so we're in a position right now where we are still reliant on fossil fuels, and unfortunately we would have seen where our premier would have purchased a Wasilla generator, which is still very much dependent on the import of fuel from external sources. And so in terms of what we can do here in Nevis to help to reduce the cost of living, we must look at our electricity supply and the cost of producing electricity. And while the geothermal seem to have taken, been put on the back burner with the CCM, it seems as if their position has been it's either geothermal or nothing at all. And what we recognize and what we understand is that we really have, short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. And so while where we are at this point in time, we may have to look at geothermal as a medium to long-term goal. We can see where many of the other islands across the Caribbean, even as close as St. Kitts, have really invested heavily in solar energy, understanding that that will minimize our reliance on external sources and on the global south, and help us to be more reliant on the natural resources that we have. We would have had a wind farm that was started, which is still contributing to our grid system. And so looking at how we can now develop our renewable energy source, starting from looking at the wind farm that we have, looking at how we can phase in solar energy, whether we start with the small businesses, because the small businesses are the ones that are really been suffering with regards to how can they keep the electricity on, keep their staff working, and there's not that much money circulating in the economy, there's not that much disposable income. And so looking at our electricity generation, that is definitely one area that we will tackle to ensure that, one, we can provide a reduced cost of living for the people here. Two, we can provide a greater appeal for investors who want to find in Nevis a place where the cost of developing or the cost of doing business is advantageous compared to other islands. And then we also look at food security and what we are able to do to be more self-reliant in terms of, we're blessed with our fertile lands, the sunshine, and water, of course, can be a problem in terms of producing our food. But here again is where we can turn to the blue economy, start looking at reverse osmosis plants and water desalination, etc. So there are a number of things that can be looked at if we have the direction we want to take Nevis to be more self-reliant and start to develop Nevis along those lines. What we have been seeing over the last several years is really just putting all of the money that we have in roads and walls. And of course, this is not, the best investment that you can have. You're not going to get any returns on your investment there. Whereas if you're able to invest in your natural resources, you can start to see the benefits that the people can benefit from. And also you can start to see where you can be more appealing to foreign investors. And so these are some of the things that we can look at to start to make this a little bit, make the cost of living a bit reduced. And it really has a lot to do with how we manage the resources. We've heard, I'm sure you would have stayed up in wherever you are and heard about the $400 million that no one can seem to find where it disappeared to. And so that $400 million could have been used in a different way, where you had more impacts on the social status of Nevis, as opposed to investing that money in one or two areas where you're not really going to be feeling the impact. And so what we have been saying for a long time is that there are one or two small pockets of people who can maybe say that they can see where the $400 million went. But when you look at the masses, when you look at the people who have to pay these high solid waste bill, high water bill, high electricity bills, the food programs for their children, so many different areas where we have social concerns, and we're not seeing where any of that money was put into those areas to make the lives of the people even feeling better. And so, of course, to reduce the cost of living, you have to spend some money, invest it wisely, and in the long run, you'll be able to see some returns. And so those are some of the things that we want to look at. We have to reduce the cost of living here in Nevis.
All right. Wow. All right. So one of the things that you spoke of, right, was the $400 million. If you were the premier of Nevis, what would have been your game plan for that $400 million? What do you think Nevis is lacking that $400 million could have really given into outside of the geothermal and the solar project? What else?
Well, definitely, healthcare is a major issue for us. We recognize that the hospital that was started is long overdue. It is still not even close to completion, and so had that money been invested properly in the development of the hospital, I think we could have seen a lot of improvement in our healthcare services. one of the problems that we see is that what was supposed to be really an extension of the hospital ended up being, almost twice the size of the existing hospital. And one must question, why was that done? When you look at the fact that we had a dialysis system there, just to be operationalized, that NRP would have left, and that dialysis has been left, to fall into disrepair. And then with regards to the 400 million, of course, we'd want to complete the hospital. Of course, we want to ensure that you have dialysis services, because our people have to travel, on a weekly basis, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week to get dialysis treatment. When you look at the fact that if you have, a car accident on Nevis and you need to get MRI or any kind of scan, of course you have to travel over to St. Kitts again. And one of the things that we have seen really creating a problem is when you have to travel overseas for medical care, and the families just cannot afford to cover those expenses. And so having access to the $400 million and more, because of course we know that it has been argued that this is not the fair share, but you asked if I were the premier, we would have received our full share, because I would have not have looked it up to the mercies of the Prime Minister to give what he wanted. He already had the basis to table the necessary bills in order to have that where it is law. So we would have had much more than the $400 million. But definitely healthcare and health who have to travel overseas, that is something we would have invested the money. And another area that I think is critical has to do with education and the type of education that we are providing. Not necessarily just looking at the primary and secondary education here, but we know that since the sixth form college was established by NRP, there really has not been any advancement in terms of educational opportunities here in Nevis for tertiary education. And so a number of our students have to travel overseas for education, and I can relate very well because I went overseas for my education as well. But then once you complete, you have the student loans and you have these high interest that you have to repay. And so it really cripples our young people in terms of them being able to get that start in life. They spend the first number of years trying to pay their student loans. And so had I been in that position, some of that $400 million would have been used to help offset, even the interest that the students have to pay when they come back home. And so at least give them an opportunity to start enjoying the fact that they went away for an education. And, I have spoken to some people who have come back, and it's as if they're regretting the fact that they took a loan to go to school because, one, there are not enough job opportunities being created. They have these high student loans to repay. And so you really cannot grow your country if the young people are struggling like that to make ends meet. And so, you look at healthcare, you look at assistance in education. I mean, we could look at affordable housing. The housing in the US is not really affordable. It's affordable when you have to work 2 and 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. But then what is the quality of life that one has? And I really do think that the government can do a lot to really make affordable housing affordable. And even when it comes to having to make that deposit, that down payment to get a mortgage facility, this is something where once you see your young people are making strides and they have quite a piece of land and they're trying to get their home now, then at least try to have a guarantee program where you can say, you go through and you apply for your mortgage, but we will ensure that the deposit is there for you. Because sometimes you're paying rent and you're paying student loan, it's hard to save up that deposit. Very hard to save up that deposit. So these are the things, if we really want to make life a bit easier for our people, these are the kind of programs that you would look at. And I would say you would recognize that these are areas where you could have spent some of the $400 million because you're trying to develop your people, you're trying to develop your country, and it's not just as if you're running a business, so to speak. You have to take into consideration that your people are not necessarily all in a position where they can benefit from scholarships and these different sorts of things. So looking at the social development is definitely a big part. And once you can get your young people excited and into entrepreneurial opportunities, etc., then you can now start to see where your youth will start to bring in even businesses that can help them to help each other, etc.
Um, Good night, Dr. Janice Daniel-Hodge. Well, I see one person in the comments. They ask a question: how do you plan to create the jobs? And I wanted to ask a question concerning the creation of jobs as well. You mentioned you mentioned some areas that you would go towards, and some of them I would say are further off than others. Whereas you have solar, and certain of them you have to build. The question I would ask you is, of the when you look at the current industries right now in Nevis, which one would you target that is currently being used, and you would expand upon it, make it better, make it more productive? Which area you see where you could see jobs created there? And then towards what you were saying, what new industry do you see that you think that could be created and exploited for the creation of jobs?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Alan. Um, I think right now, because we speak so much about food security, for example, um, we really do a lot of imports, and in some instances, even if you're going to break even on your import costs compared to creating job opportunities, then you would have to take the decision that you would prefer to create job opportunities. Now, one of the pet peeves that I always speak about is, for example, having to go to the supermarket to buy Dole mango chunks when everybody has a mango tree in their backyard. But we have not developed the benefits of having a mango industry, so to speak. And so imagine beginning to develop a mango industry where you start from the planting, the harvesting, the processing, and so you can employ people along every stage of the day. Right now we have people employed in agriculture, and to a great extent they're doing a great job for some of the crops. But I think we have not really looked at the full potential of which we can use mango for. And so when you look at the mango, everybody having a mango tree in their backyard, and you know that there is an industry where you can collect your mangoes and bring them to that facility, and they can be bought from you and processed to where we can start exporting. It's not so much that you're doing it to make a high return, but you're going to be able to create employment opportunities for people along the way. Now, one of the other areas that we can look at as well has to do with, again, the blue-green economy. Now, we know that fishing is a major industry here. Well, major because so many people do it, but we have not really invested in our fishers so that we can minimize on importing some of the seafood that we import. And so when you look at fish harvesting, so to speak, when you look at opportunities such as aquaculture and fish farming, these are areas that people are already, participating in these areas, but the government has not invested in the necessary infrastructure and facilities for them to be able to capitalize to the greatest extent. Now, I'm not certain if you looked at the ocean today, but the amount of sargassum that is coming across our waters right now, it is not only impacting the tourism, it's impacting the fishes, and just the health of our ocean is being impacted. And so in Antigua, for example, we see where they are harvesting the sargassum and exporting it to New Zealand to be converted into biofuel. We also know that sargassum can be processed and used in as a fertilizer to help your food crops. And it can also be used as a feed. And so, in this sort of a situation, if we really are serious about food security, and here is a natural resource which sargassum is, imagine how many jobs can be created if we said, you know what, we are going to harvest this sargassum so it does not impact our fishes. I can recall, I think it was last year, the fishers at Indian Castle could not go out to fish because of how much sargassum was in the area. And it just stayed there and stayed there until eventually it passed. But if we develop an industry, we are going to harvest this sargassum and put it to use in different ways. These are things that are already there. The mangroves are already there. It's just a matter of channeling them into a particular area. And one of the areas that we really have not been doing a good job at, and I think we can do a bit more, has to do with pollution of our marine environment. And so when we look at the issue with plastic, single-use plastics, when you look at the plastic bottles, how many end up in the ocean? And we know that they are detrimental to the marine life. These are areas where you can create the necessary infrastructure for people to collect these bottles and have them processed in a certain way. And so while we do have certain autonomy about how we deal with our waste, we do have the Nevis Solid Waste Management Act, which gives Nevis certain authorities. And so while sometimes people say, well, this is a federation, and if you try to ban plastics in Nevis, what's going to happen in St. Kitts? But I think because we have that separation, St. Kitts does stuff with their solid waste authority that Nevis does not do. And so we're in a position where we can identify funding opportunities, because this all feeds back into your climate change mitigation and adaptation. And there is a significant amount of funding available to help the small island states deal with the impacts of climate change. And so looking at how we can protect our marine environment is an area that we really have not exploited to the greatest extent, and something that we can continue to do. Another area that we can look at. Okay, you're smiling, so have I given you an idea of how we can?
Definitely, but I see you mention now that Nevis has its own powers to deal with their waste. So, and because this is a federal election, so what I was wondering, so you're saying if you are elected as a federal minister, you will do your best nonetheless to work along with the Nevis Island administration, so that these funds go to them and they're able to. How would that function?
Well, you see, and this is where it comes down to accountability, etc. Because if we have these millions of dollars under the CBI program, but you're not seeing any allocation of how we want to utilize these funds. And so what you end up seeing, like I said, is one, a number of incomplete projects, and secondly, a number of roads and walls. But our solid waste is still struggling to the extent that the fee was increased recently. But if with $400 million, if we had a concerted effort to say, well, from some of this $400 million, We are going to upgrade our solid waste facility. We're going to put in the type of equipment that can recycle plastics and you can then use them back into concrete or something like that. Then from that $400 million, if you said this is what I want to do is to deal with solid waste in Nevis, then you set aside $100 million, and I can assure you, you can have a facility there that is going to minimize the amount of land that you would need, because right now we're running out of land there, but you're not seeing any build up of the infrastructure to say that we're moving in the 21st century and to capitalize on all the technology that is out there to help to deal with solid waste, especially with the recycling of plastics and that sort of thing. And it's not just to remove the plastics from the ocean, but it's also that you can recycle them and so minimize on some of the things that you would have to import. And so it's not so much that because you're a federal representative, our motto basically has been Nevis first. Nevis has always been the first priority for NRP. And so whether it's in St. Kitts or in Scotland or wherever it is, our focus must be on how we can advance Nevis, the use of Nevis, how we can advance ourselves from an economic point of view. And so that is where being part of the federal government and knowing that you have access to this amount of CBI funds, and there are other funds, I might add, but you must be able to give account for how you are utilizing these funds for the betterment of the people. And so you would not have to add on this $25 solid waste bill on people's water bill, forcing people to disconnect their water because they cannot afford the recurring $25 when they're not generating solid waste. And so when you look at how you can better the lives of people, that is what you would go to St. Kitts to be a representative for the people of Nevis for. And so that is how you would make those allocations. You earmark and you say, we want to deal with health with X percentage. We want to deal with education with X percentage. Not just get it and it disappears, and the people on the ground are not feeling any benefit of having that kind of money passed through.
Well, just one thing, and that since it just come to my mind. Since you would be of the position that even though it's a federal election, rightfully because you would be voted for by the people of Nevis and you would be representing the people of Nevis. But
bingo.
It's a
bingo. But I have to say bingo.
No, I understand. But so I would ask you this question then. Suppose you are not only okay. Let me ask schedule question first. He said if he just turned 18, how would you sway him to vote for NRP? That is schedule Libral's question. So you go ahead and answer that.
Well, I would have mentioned a couple of things about the youth, right? And so when you look at developing a country, we have said over and over again that we must move towards renewable energy. And once you're moving towards renewable energy, even as we have seen in St. Kitts with the solar facilities, etc., what we want to be able to do is to ensure that our youths are able to capitalize on the different ways in which we're developing Nevis. And so you provide the necessary training and certification so that you can get jobs looking at whether it's the installation or maintenance of solar energy facilities. You will provide job opportunities to help to develop, whether it's electric solar batteries for your vehicles. And so look at the type of interest that the youth have. In speaking to a number of them, they're very much interested in, of course, the technology, their smartphones, etc. But many of them cannot develop an app, and they're always using these apps. And so they're just saying that you meet people where they are and you understand what it is that they're looking for. And so even when you look at some of the programs that are in place, you're not seeing where the youths are benefiting as they ought to. And so we provide programs where the youths can have an opportunity to experience different types of working professions, so to speak, at no cost to them. A number of them, you ask them what do they want to do, they tell you they want to make money, but they don't know how they want to make the money. It's not that they want to make money. And so when you really dissect and look at the things that they're interested in, a lot of them are interested in entrepreneurship. A lot of them are interested in entertainment, creating music and that sort of thing. And so when we look at how we want to develop Nevis, sports is definitely a big part of our future plans or our current and future plans for development. And so students who are taking part in sports and then they have to, go home and do homework, etc., you don't find the kind of support provided to help these students excel in the sports that they could go off and become, the next Olympian and these sort of things. And so you create the type of environment where students or the youth can excel in different areas. It's not strictly an academic type of environment. We want to be able to know if a youth is interested in music, in sports, any of these areas, that you provide the type of environment that they will be able to excel in. Feel comfortable and enjoy, the work that you have to do.
As you mentioned, feeling comfortable, I just want to make a suggestion for you if you are ever in the position to do it. I was talking to some cricketers this weekend, and we were talking about our experiences in different islands playing. And when you go to Sinkits, generally there is a dressing room. And not only is there a dressing room, they open up the dressing room for you and you get a chance to use the facilities. Whereas I remember, like, even for instance, primary school cricket, and when you reach by the ground, take off your clothes and put on your clothes. And it really does be a massive experience when you're young to go to Antigua Recreation Ground and know that you're in the dressing room or like the big cricketers them does win and these type of thing. So it's just a small little thing, but just consider, as you said, the comfort of the athletes and these type of thing. That is one of the disappointments, in my opinion, with regards to the Mondo Track. Just a simple little thing. There is no dressing room, so you just got to do what you got to do. These kind of ways. So it was just a small thing.
And I appreciate that, because these are things that we will want to look at, because when you decide that you're going to take a path towards development, now if we say, for example, in the NRP, we want to look at sports tourism, we want to look at health tourism, we want to look at, of course, your sun, sand, and sea, etc. But if you're going to be looking at sports tourism, then you must develop, the facilities to be able to attract other athletes to come here. And it's interesting. I think it was for the inter-school relays, when somebody asked the question, why is it that the Nevis athletes always have to go to St. Kitts to participate in these sports, notwithstanding the number of schools on each island. But we have not, the CCM government has not seen it a priority to develop the Mondo Track to the extent to where you can capitalize on it. And I can recall the Premier saying, well, what happened? The children can't run on it? Well, you don't develop, you don't invest all that money in the Mondo Track, and just say, oh, the children can run on it. You create opportunities to have different meets and different, schools coming in and challenging our youth here, and you have a world-class facility. I mean, you spend all this money in a track and then no proper seating area, no changing facilities, and so this gives you an idea that these people cannot really have the best interest of the people of Nevis at all, because you would not begin the Mondo Track and feel that it is complete now because children can run on it, and you cannot look at the water taxi where our high net worth tourists are going to be coming in, and no proper checking in area, no proper parking facility, and we feel that this is good enough. This is good enough. And so these are things that we have to look at in terms of developing. And if you do one thing and you do it well, and you can say, this is where we're going to excel and this is where we're going to capitalize. But you can't have all of these incomplete projects and feel that you're doing a great job. and don't want anybody to ask you what you did with the money. Not one project is complete. The water taxi, they ask if the boat them not running. And if you go there, you get wet if rain falls. But on the same hand, we're saying this is our we're developing Nevis as a high end destination, and people have to get wet when they wait to get the water taxi. And don't talk about the airport and you know. So when you look at these things, you really want to know in which direction is Nevis going right now. And I think on an NRP, when people clearly understand that we're looking at the blue-green economy, we're looking at developing our natural resources in which our musicians, our athletes, you know, all of these, you know, are part of your natural resources. And so when you're developing, you know, you invest in your youth. And so when they can really excel and feel, you know, proud of themselves and they can go off and they can, you know, compete in these different areas, then it says a lot for us. One of the ideas that we have in mind has to do, like I said, with sports tourism. And you see, you know, you would have drag racing and it's dying. It is dying. And that is because there's no direction and no focus in where we are supposed to be moving Nevis as a country. What are the priorities? What can anybody say right now is the priority of this CCM government? We'll be very hard pressed. The priority is to have phased projects. Phased projects, and they come and they tell you at election time that we will complete it. Even their trip down to Bastia is phased because they went in one phase and did nothing. And now they want a second phase to go back and get the phase share that they said they went down to get in the first instance. They cannot complete anything. They cannot complete anything. And as much as we say the Charlestown Accord is out of the window now, of course it's out of the window because the team unity under which it was executed is no longer there. And so whereas that was a golden opportunity for the Premier of Nevis to go down and say, listen, all three parties sitting here sign this agreement. Let me put a bill on the table to ensure that the Prime Minister, no matter who he is, will not be able to come and say, oh, I gave you 45, I gave you 30 million because that's what you asked for, and I gave you 45 million because that's what you asked for. I know you want some more, okay, I give you that, but I ain't gonna give you no more. I mean, come on. So I am saying that we, under this CCM, we have really moved backwards because that agreement, which was executed by the late Premier Amri, it is unfortunate that his successor could not take it to the full extent of where it was intended to go. And so now you need people who understand that Nevis is always our first priority and who could understand what it means to negotiate on behalf of the people of Nevis to get to a similar position again.
DJ Nyan asks, what are your plans for the airport? And he also asks, what can the government do to decrease prices for the airline tickets? Don't answer that one there. The government can't do nothing, DJ Nyan. The airlines are private entities and they set the price. The government is not going to assist you in nothing. You look and you see what price, you find the best price and you take your price, Mr. Nyan. With regards to the airport, Miss Daniel-Hodge, you could say what plans you would have for the airport. Go ahead.
All right, it's good to have an ally boy. Yes. So, I mean, when we look at the airport and where we are now, I will tell you two things that I have realized, and I really have to touch this before I can move on to what I would want to say. But when you look, I think it was in 2019 that we saw an agreement being signed between the NIA and a company called BNL, represented by Mr. Powell out of St. Kitts. And at that time, it was supposed to be serving as an airport, as a hub, and we're looking at large flights coming in. Interestingly, that agreement only lasted for about a year, and then that was dissolved. And then you heard about a new agreement with someone, uh, someone high net worth living in Nevis, and there is now a different idea with regards to how the airport should be managed. And the problem that I have with this is that the people of Nevis were not privy to what the agreement with Attorney General Powell and BNL was about. The people of Nevis have not received any information about the alleged agreement with a private individual. And these are things that I feel and I know when you go to most countries and we talk about transparency and good governance, the people would know what the plans are for the airport. You can have a survey and say, how would you like to see the airport develop? People can contribute, and then you go out and you try to find investors who can share the same, ideas and vision as what the country wants in terms of development. Not one person sit down in a room and said, well, today we want this for the airport. Oh no, tomorrow we don't want that. We want something else. And so these are the things that, creates a lot of concern. And each time you sign an agreement, I mean, you know what it is to execute an agreement and how much in terms of legal fees and all of these, and if you're going to break the agreement, so all of these things have to be looked at. And nobody is hearing what these agreements are about. Now, I can recall when we had Eliat, when we had American Eagle, when we had Winnie, when we had, who else we said? Coastal Air, Cape Air. We used to have a number of different airlines coming into Nevis, transporting people from the hubs, the St. Martins after the long flights from the Dutch countries. You had flights coming in from San Juan, from Antigua.
Yes.
And so there was a connection. Nevis was connected to the outer world from the same airport that we have now. And so, yes, the cost of fuel has increased, and it is more difficult now to have tickets at a lower price, I guess, based on what the young man or the young person was asking a while back. But with a concerted effort, I even remember when we had Nevis Express. We had our Nevis airline. And so sometimes I think the same challenge that we have with the geothermal and bringing renewable energy to Nevis and a reduced cost of electricity, I think it's the same challenge that we're having with the airport, where there is no in between or there's no middle ground. And so rather than try to work and have some relationships with some of these intermediate airlines, we're trying to go for the jumbo jets and extending the airport 5,000 feet and all of these distances. But there are things that can be done in the short term to build up, the traffic to generate some revenues. As it is right now, the airport cannot make any money because people have to go over to St. Kitts and whatever fees that in some airlines the fees are included in the airline ticket, etc. But the airport right now is serving only the courier service, the DHLs and the FedEx, and one or two charters that come in, but has nothing to do with government really. Ms. Wilkin has been at the airport for quite some time, and she has been able to keep some charter flights going. Now imagine having a government that understands the importance of having that connect with the outer world and not trying to go for the big jumbo jet that you're not going to get in a short-term basis, but understand that you need to have a short-term plan, a medium-term plan, and a long-term plan. Then you can see what you're working towards. And you cannot do it by yourself, sitting in a room and signing agreements after agreements after agreements. The people must have a say in how they would like to see the airport developed. And so these are some of the things that I would ensure that the people are part of the in terms of determining how we would want to go forward. We know where we have been, we know where we want to go, and then you move in a progressive and methodical way in order to accomplish your final goal at the end, which is, again, to make the airport vibrant, to create opportunities. You know how many people used to work at that airport who are now unemployed? And again, when you think about you're doing this for the people, then you will find ways to get things done. You know, and now if you just do it to as a business and you want to make a profit, you know, then you're not going to think about the number of people who are now unemployed who used to be working at that airport. That doesn't come into your equation. But it will come into the equation of NRP, because NRP has always been about performance and putting people at the center of whatever decisions we have to make.
All right.
Ask the next question from Renzo. Renzo got a question up there.
Yeah, there is a There is a question there. So, question from Renzo is, can you ask the NRP leader what is the plans for Gingerland, seeing that Gingerland is underappreciated and underdeveloped? That's pretty much it. Plans for Gingerland.
Well, first of all, we have a very capable candidate in Gingerland in the name of Mr. Rohan Adams. And when you listen to Rohan speak with regards to the ideas and the plans for Gingerland, you know, sometimes he say he doesn't want anybody to take his ideas. But Gingerland is an area that people say it has been underdeveloped and underappreciated. I think it has to do with, as Rohan Ayers would have said, you know, he is a new vision, and while some people may say that he is not originally from Gingerland, as far as NRP is concerned, all the people believe this are our responsibility. And so once we identify what the concerns are, I've been having conversations with Rohan, and he has identified a number of areas. The need for medical services in that Gingerland area between Gingerland and Newcastle is something that Rohan is very passionate about. We talk about the fisheries for down at Indian Castle. We also spoke about the training opportunities in EMT and that sort of thing that we would want to be able to have our people, exposed to. And the health service area, one of the things that we have been looking at is the decentralization. You do not necessarily need to have all of the services at Alexandria Hospital, and you can have polyclinics where you can have certain special services in different areas. And these are some of the things that we have been looking at. Now, there's also the idea to open up the road along the south coast of Nevis. This is something that NRP would have looked at many years ago, and that was put aside. I think I can recall it was the 2021 budget when the CCM said that they're going to do again a feasibility study about opening up that road to provide more traffic and more opportunities to take that road going around. And so there are a number of different things that have been looked at, because when NRP speaks about developing Nevis, we're talking about developing Nevis, and it doesn't matter, where people are from. The intention that we have is to ensure that whatever we do, there is equal opportunity and equal access. And so Mr. Ayers, I know, is eager to address any specific questions that Mr. Griffin may have, but just understand that we have ensured that we have a very capable and competent candidate to represent the constituency of St. George's, and with the team that we have. Because you see, we do not look at NRP as I'm the leader by virtue of I am the leader, but I am not the leader in everything. And so when we sit down to discuss, we have a team that complements, we complement each other, and we're able to share ideas and brainstorm and see what is going to be in the best interest for the development of Nevis. And so, like they say, no child left behind, no constituency is left behind when it comes to NRP.
All right, I love that. So one of the things we kind of we went over, you were speaking about the youth, right? And kind of moved away a little quickly. But one of the things that you spoke about was entrepreneurship and also individuals wanting to get into entertainment. One of the things that I have noticed, especially once I left Nevis and went to the Virgin Islands for some time, is that you have a lot of individuals in the Virgin Islands who are taught a lot of these skills in schools, whereas within our educational paradigm, we don't have that. Is there something that you would look into to have these things, entrepreneurship, business, entertainment classes, music classes brought into the educational curriculum?
Well, Reese, what I'll tell you, right? And when we say that being a part of the federal cabinet, it's not just about looking for fair share in terms of CBI funds, right? We have seen under Team Unity an entire new ministry created that Akila Byron Nisbet is heading up that deals with entertainment, entrepreneurship, etc. How come the CCM representative is not asking for our fair share with regards to that new ministry? We do not have a similar ministry, and so there is no focus. And everybody, as you say, is doing their own little thing here and there. When you recognize what a ministry can do in terms of coordinating and putting programs together and developing, my colleague, Honorable Cleo Simmons speaks about the orange economy, right? Which has to do with creativity and entrepreneurship and actually valuing. I think we have to value creativity of our youths in terms of what they can do with regards to entertainment and music and develop the type of music that can be, as you said, the Nevis beat or the Nevis style. And I think it was Tyrone Flaherty who had what I know this is kind of old school, right? But I remember when Flaherty came out with the quadrille something, Contra Fever taking over, something like that beat, and up to now you can still hear it. And so you have people like, Delhi and Corey and all these people who go all the way to Dubai and these different places to, expose their talents and stuff like that. And so we have what you said, the rudimentaries in terms of having the people, having the skills, having the talent, but you need a government that can understand the importance of how this sector is going to contribute to the development of the Nevis and put the necessary programs in place so that the youths can be exposed. I know we have some drumming in schools right now, but again, you cannot do these things in a sort of piecemeal fashion. And as part of the Team Unity government, you would imagine that an entire ministry was created to tap into that. We talk about being creative and being innovative and all of this sort of thing. You need to have the similar type of situation here. And it's not as if you already have a federal, ministry. So it's not as if you're going to reinvent the wheel. And this is something that NRP has said over and over again. We do not go into something to say we're going to reinvent. We have seen where CCM has come into government and has abandoned project that has been already approved, funded, and abandoned those projects because what? They want to do something new. And up to now, they cannot do anything that is new. And so, seeing what has been put in place in the federal government with regards to that particular sector with entrepreneurship, etc., is just a matter of making a concerted effort. And again, when you talk about your fair share, take some fair share for developing the youths the same way. Because up to now, people are still asking, what are we doing? What are we doing with the $400 million? The youths are not feeling it. The single mothers are not feeling it. The small businesses are not feeling it. Nobody's feeling this $400 million, right? And so there's nothing wrong with doing roads and providing some work for the construction workers, but it's a much larger society, and you cannot discriminate against one set and enrich another set. You must look across the board. It must be all inclusive and try for as many people as possible to feel the benefits of having a program such as that.
All right. Gentlemen, any questions or can I continue?
Oh, continue. I think
All
Alan,
right.
you're
So,
muted, eh?
Alan, you have something?
No, guy.
All right. Well, let's get into this election thing that we're looking at currently. As we know, election is due sometime in August, right? Has there been any conversation amongst you and your team of the possibility of joining a coalition government? I think right now, from what we're seeing, we may be looking at another coalition government. Have you thought about? Have you and your team discussed anything about joining with another party from St. Kitts to form a coalition government?
Reese, I want to add to that a little bit.
Okay.
Because of the mathematics of federal government, meaning that you have to have 6. That means that Nevis is only involved in the conversation where nobody down in St. Kitts have 6. So in order, in my estimation, to get into the federal government, you have to be in a conversation. I don't even need to know if there is an alliance. As we saying, I would like to know if there are if there are open lines of
Communication.
communication. Yes.
That's a different question to what Reese asked. Reese asked if within my party we have been having discussions. You're asking now if we're having discussions across waters.
Okay. Answer
One is
Reese's
primary school and one
question
is
and
high
then
school.
answer mine as well. Thank you very much. Since they are
All
different,
right.
no problem. Answer Reese's and then answer mine.
All right. So certainly, we must discuss, what the overall scenario is going to be like. And what we do know in NRP is that we have the capacity to work in collaboration with members of a different party. And we have NRP has worked with PAM, NRP has worked with Labour, and NRP and Nevis was able to get what they participated in those coalitions for. They did not end up getting fired. They did not end up mashing up the government. NRP understands it's a totally different type of philosophy and approach to governance that NRP has compared to what the CCM has. And so this is a situation where their modus operandi is to divide and conquer, to mash up and disrupt when they can't get what they want. NRP has a totally different approach. We know we can sit and collaborate, and like I like to say, the pen is mightier than the sword. And had the premier used his pen when he was sitting in cabinet for 7 years, or in parliament for 7 years, we may not have been in this position right now. And so, obviously, um, any political party in St. Kitts and Nevis, you must have communications with each other. You must take an opportunity to find out what are what is the vision of the different parties. You cannot wait until the day of after election to say, well, now I'm going to try to find out what this party is all about. And so you must already start to begin to identify whether or not there's some similarities or whether or not there's some things that you just cannot work with. And so you must have discussions ongoing. The only party I see that has taken this position in this space that we're in right now, and people must beg the question. CCM and PAM are so confident that they can get 6 seats between them, that they don't even have to wait to see how the people in St. Kitts would vote to determine what kind of relationship they would form or what coalition they would form. Now, NRP had a very successful relationship with PAM before. It was a successful relationship in that NRP was able to contribute to the Constitution and took the country into independence. Labor on the other hand, when Labor got 6 seats, they did not have to invite. It's not as if NRP would have join in a coalition with Labour, so to speak, to form the government. Labour already had 6 seats, and the NRP was invited to be a part of that cabinet. And so, when you look at the whole dynamics, you must really understand, based on what's happening in St. Kitts, there's some people who feel that Labour is going to win 6. There's some people who feel that PLP is going to give a big surprise. There's some people who feel that PAM and CCM are not going to do anything, right? And I'm one of those people. But whoever comes out victorious, you must be able to sit down and share some common goals for the country, and as well understand what your vision is for Nevis and how that fits into the overall scheme of things. And so, just to reaffirm, NRP has taken the position that we're not any pre-election alliances. I think it is foolhardy to do such. And so, but we are, of course, observing and discussing and seeing how best the alignment may be. I mean, at the end of the day, you cannot get you can get a 4-4 situation in St. Kitts, and NRP can get 2 in Nevis. And wow, that is just so exciting to think of that possibility, right? But you never know what the scenarios are going to be. And so you just have to be open, stay focused, and understand that our position is that Nevis is our first priority. Whatever we do, it would be in the best interest of Nevis and the people of Nevis. And we can just, look to see what happens in St. Kitts, what the people in St. Kitts would decide with regards to who they would want to represent them. And NRP just has to position itself to make sure that we can be in the best position to advance Nevis going forward.
Okay. All right. You muted, Alan? Hold on.
My question was answered with regards to if there's an open dialogue.
Yeah,
I feel like Ree's question was definitely answered. I feel like Ree's part was definitely answered, but I'm just trying to make sure, because remember I was told it's 2 different parts. So I just trying to
No,
make sure.
yours was answered as well.
Yeah, it was.
Yours was answered as well.
No problem. No problem.
I just wanted to, add, is there a possibility that you work with the CCM party as well in the federal government?
As I would have said, once NRP is of the view that we can take a position that would be in the best interest of the people, what the concern that we have is that the approach that CCM has to governance is totally opposite to the approach that NRP takes, and I think the people of Nevis would appreciate as well. And so, like I said, NRP understands the need to be patient sometimes. NRP understands that the power is in the pen. NRP understands that you must understand what your overall objective and gain is. And so even if you have to go through some rough times, you know what your overall objective is. CCM has demonstrated that they do not have the patience, that they're not necessarily working in the best interest for the people of Nevis. And so I think that would be a very interesting situation, because we're just 2 different parties, and but I've learned a long time ago to never say never. The question is, because CCM had approached NRP before to work with them on certain matters. They have approached us with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic and the vaccination rollout program. We would have sat with them. We explained what we thought was the better approach with regards to engaging all of the doctors on the island of Nevis and having the doctors be the ones that communicate with their patients and the population to get to the better understanding of why there's hesitation and how you can deal with it. And this is something where we feel because of the small size of Nevis, we could have taken an approach that was slightly different than some of the other mainstream approaches that we were seeing. And so we said, listen, engage all of the doctors and let them be the ones that, deliver the message and talk to the people and get a better understanding. And that was thrown out. Didn't want to hear anything about it. The vaccine saves lives and people should take the vaccine and stop being, it's as if, like I said to take it, I took it, so you take it. And I can recall having a conversation with a young man in one time where we were talking about the vaccine. And the question was asked about, why are some people afraid of taking the vaccine? And we spoke about everyday situations, where you have some people who are terrified as a spider. I mean, they just can't help it. They see a spider and they're about to get a heart attack. And then you have some people that take the spider and pet it and they play with it and it's no problem. And so people have genuine differences with regards to how they respond to change, with regards to how they respond to certain things. And so until you can have an appreciation that people are different and you cannot approach everybody and try to give everybody the same medicine the same way, until you can have an appreciation for that, then you're not going to get the type of cooperation that would be needed, and you're not going to get the type of understanding. And so I think after a while, a lot of people were really just refusing because they felt that they were being dictated to. And it's almost the same thing where, when the premier first got in, he said, when I walk in a room, you must stand up. And how long did that last? And so this kind of dictatorial approach where you feel like, because I am the leader, then I must say something and this is what it is, then, that would not work. And so we have, sat with CCM before and tried to look at certain issues. The same fair share matter. I think it was in March before the government dissolved. And I think we would have written to the Prime Minister and to the Premier, indicating that the parliamentary process is the way to go. When we started hearing all of this confusion back and forth, and we said, no, we don't need this right now. Of course, we know we're trying to focus on the local election. Here comes all this disruption, in the federal government. And we would have taken a position and written and said, with regards to the fair share, please use parliamentary procedures to address the situation. And so, and so these are situations where we would have made an attempt to work with the Premier to help to address some of the problems that are affecting Nevis. But he would want to say, because we do not see it his way, NRP don't want to help. I extend out an olive branch and NRP don't want to fight for Nevis fair share. NRP are not fighters. We're not fighters. We're not here to fight. He sat in Parliament for 7 years and did not pick up this pen to table the bill that was necessary to ensure that Nevis got his fair share. And now he wants us to come and jump up and cry and shout with him. No, that's not the approach. That is not the way. And you cannot have what is necessary to pass the legislation and you break it up, walk out of it, and then say you're going to cry. So when NRP comes and say, yes, we want Nevis, what are we supposed to do at this juncture? Just jump on his bandwagon and say we want the fair share? Had they stayed in Parliament and they wanted all Davis to join them. After they would have tabled the legislation, right? You table the legislation, or you table the bill, and it is not heard, or it is denied, then you get all of Nevis up with you. But you cannot walk out of there, do not present the bill or whatever you need to present inside there. How can we help? Mr. Powell, you're not attorney. How can we help at this juncture?
You mute, you
You're
mute.
muted again.
How can we help who?
CCM at this juncture
No.
because they didn't. They
How
chose
NRP
not
go
to.
help CCM?
Yeah, they chose
So
not
we're
to
not
table
touching
it.
them for the future.
Well, maybe he learned that from Tim. Cause he say the leader now listen. So maybe he learned that from Tim and he try it from NRP. You understand? New leadership style.
Well,
But
I guess
uh, as I'm saying though, because you just mentioned something there about introducing bills into parliament, especially if, as I say, if you end up on the opposition benches. The premier would have mentioned he was, I think, the first opposition parliamentarian to move a bill. But I think the real achievement will be not just to move a bill, but to be able to move a bill and for it to be supported by the government. You understand? So I think that and that is one of the things that people seem to like about your ability to operate operate well, first of all in a calm manner, and then within different social sectors and talk to different people. So I'm just saying, I think that it's gonna be important overall, as you say, if it is in the best interest of neighbors to have open lines of communication.
yep. And we have,
Um,
like I said, we have.
yeah,
No, I said we're open to communication. We try to assist where we can, but like I said, the approaches are different, and we have to see how that works out.
well, okay, all right, I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna leave that one alone. I have another question to ask with regards to the well, let us call it the NRP Constitution question. No, I don't know. I don't have the Constitution or anything, and I don't need to know any part of the Constitution.
And hold on that one. Let,
Hold
let
off on the
yeah
one
let,
there. All right,
let
no
me
problem.
let me ask a question from um someone. So
No problem.
they wanted to know if uh, there were any plans to implement a yearly fund in which schools or individuals from schools don't have to solely depend on businesses for a sponsor, being that everyone can't get one. And I think you would have touched on that earlier when you mentioned, the differences you would have done with the 400 million. But
Well, I guess once you assess the different needs, right? Because you really must respond to the needs of the people. And so I know, for example, we just had interprimary, and some of the schools did not have, track shoes for their students, and they, had to go out and try to seek sponsorships and stuff like that. And so when you really are serious about developing sports, you don't just put down the track and then, leave the students without the necessary, equipment that they would need, and across all sports areas. And so, like I said, targeting the areas that you would want to really touch, where you see you can really develop Nevis in a, on a global scale, so to speak, by investing in our people and our natural resources.
okay, and I know on the platform you have spoken about what you think are some of the shortfalls of the Minister of Agriculture as well as the Minister of Environment and Natural Resources. Is that the portfolio? Um, I think I,
Well, you have,
Sustainable development and cooperatives.
okay, sustainable development, which
Yeah.
is actually
no, no, it's environment and cooperatives.
environment.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Well,
Environment and
Yeah.
cooperatives.
okay. I was talking to my uncle and he mentioned that, for instance, I think it was pig deworm medicine is twice the cost in Nevis, and you and you would have mentioned that fisheries they go in sinkets and what's not. First of all, why you think we have this problem where the cost of living is so much higher? I can't see it just being fuel, but what do you think is the cause, and what do you think would be a good solution in the agricultural sector? Sorry, and then the other part would be I wanted you to dive into how you think that Minister Evelyn may have dropped short on his portfolio in St. Kitts.
All right. So environment and cooperatives, that's Evelyn, and agriculture and marine resources fisheries, that's Jeffers. That's Jeffers. And so now, Minister of Environment um, has a lot to do with, that is where you deal a lot with the climate change issues, global warming, all of these different factors. And we would have seen Minister Evelyn go over to Scotland and to represent the Federation in COP26. And, he made a presentation. But when you look at what would follow from those presentations, it would be pledges to fund certain projects. You'll find some of the developed countries making pledges to help developing states deal with certain issues. And because we know that geothermal is a resource that we have, not every island, would have that resource, then I think that would have been an excellent opportunity to network with those persons who were fighting the fight about reducing the use of fossil fuel, and say, listen, this is what we want to be able to do here in Nevis with regards to this. Not only that, but as Minister of Environment, and you have certain facilities, funding opportunities coming through St. Kitts. There's one in particular called the Green Climate Fund. And with the Green Climate Fund, you have funding for a number of different projects that will help to minimize carbon. And of course, if we're not using fossil fuel to generate electricity, then we are contributing to the reduction of carbon in the atmosphere. But when Minister Evelyn spoke, he said, I've represented the country well. And if you don't believe me, ask the people in the OECS, and ask the people in Scotland, and ask the people in all of these different places that he would have been to. And not one did he say, do you think I represented you well? Because the people in Nevis would say, no, there's nothing that the people in Nevis can say that they have seen, because he was the Minister of Environment in St. Kitts and had access to a number of grant applications where he could have said, I want to make sure that Nevis gets its fair share of whatever this grant funding is. And so if you're going to be bringing in a $20 million grant, I want to make sure that Nevis gets its fair share. 4 million or whatever it is, so that we can have environmental projects in this as well. And so you did not see that. And it's the same thing that occurs with the Minister for Fisheries and Agriculture. The grants are being sent out from St. Kitts. You get grant funding to provide certain, whether it's fertilizers or food or different things like that. Well, where is the effort to make sure that you can, even if you have to adjust the grant application because the cost of doing business in Nevis is higher, well, you do what is necessary so that you can ensure the people in Nevis do not have to pay a higher price. And these are some of the areas where, having the advantage of being the Minister of Fisheries in St. Kitts and the Minister of Fisheries in Nevis, but of course it's the Minister of Marine Resources, then you should have been able to level the playing field, at least for the fishers, right? But they have not seen it. They go down to work for St. Kitts and then they come up to work for Nevis. And then even to purchase stuff in St. Kitts, you have to come back to Nevis and get your fishermen to go down to St. Kitts to purchase stuff. I mean, not even to purchase the stuff in St. Kitts in bulk, so the fishers over here don't have to burn the gas in their boat, don't have to pay a ferry, buy a ferry ticket. So these are some of the things that we have to look at. Gentlemen, I think my battery is going to run. If you give me just one quick second, let me plug in my laptop.
All right, no problem. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
No, perfectly fine.
Excuse me?
No problem. You can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I was saying when you have that position, for example, the Ministry of Marine Resources, basically, that's a federal ministry. And this is something that, again, I have a bit of a concern about because under the Constitution, Nevis has responsibility for fisheries. And at one time, we used to have a director of fisheries in Nevis and a director of fisheries in St. Kitts. Now, I think it was 2016 or 2017 that the Fisheries Act was repealed, and we had the Fisheries, Aquaculture, and Marine Resources Act. And under that act, it put the responsibility for fisheries under the federal government. And so now in Nevis, rather than having a director of fisheries, we have a deputy director of marine resources. And so decisions that used to be made in Nevis with regards to fisheries can no longer be made in Nevis because we only have a deputy director. And this would have occurred under the CCM watch. And so even under that act, there is still a provision for fair share because there's certain funds that are to be deposited under the fisheries and marine resources in a fund, right? And so anybody followed up with that to see, and this is where you have boats in violation and you confiscate the boat and you sell it and in violation and stuff like that. So, but you're not hearing anybody talking about fair share in that. And then now when you look at, for example, I'm just going to stretch it just a little bit over to maritime affairs, which again is another federal program. We do not have a maritime affairs in Nevis, but under maritime affairs, where you have the ship registration program, where our flag is being used across the world, just like our passport is. And people are paying to use our flag on their ship. You don't hear anybody asking about our fair share from the ship registry program. And so when you look at your responsibility as a representative for Nevis in the federal government, it is not just to go down and sign papers what the PS give you to sign. You have to go down and understand and keep in mind that we were not, these people have been in the federal parliament for how many years? We have now just made the shift understanding that the federal election is going to take place before the local election. And so now we have had to shift gears to really understand and plan our path for representing Nevis in the federal government. It's not just to go down and say, oh, we have a job and this is what we do. No, you must understand for every grant program on a federal ministry, there must be some allocation to Nevis. But instead of that, we're seeing the cost of goods in Nevis is higher than it is in St. Kitts. So what really is the representation? And it's interesting because when you listen to them campaign, you're not hearing them say, well, I did this for Nevis and I did that. They say, oh, we represent well. We went down to St. Kitts and we represent. And we represent. And we got our leader wherever he takes us. Right? And they follow him and walked out of Parliament instead of sitting inside there and presenting the bill to get Nevis' fair share.
All right. Alan?
Unmute myself first. Okay. Yeah. What is referred to as the constitutional question, but for me is not a constitutional question. It's an integrity question. So I'm not really concerned with the provisions in the NRP constitution at this time, and it's kind of two-parted too. NRP thought it wise. They looked at the situation in CCM and they said that you should not be able to get two salary, and they would have advertised that they changed their constitution and that going forward they would be, well, if you are elected as a federal representative, then you can go for the local. Because as I said, we were focusing on an upcoming local election. Even though the prime minister or whoever is in power can ring the bell at any moment in time, the local was more due, and you had been introduced as a local candidate, but you're running as a federal candidate. I had heard Miss Pat Bartlett, and to be fair to her, she had said that at the time she was giving her opinion on what would be going on. She said that the party would get together and have a collective response, and I think some time has passed since that has happened. So the question would be, and as I said, is from a standpoint of I would hear NRP attack the Premier in terms of his honesty. So is NRP going to hold true to this if any persons are elected for the federal election? Will they be excluded from running? As you say, we know there is a local election around the corner, and so the second part to the question was, are you doing recruiting, understanding that this is the situation at this point in time? How is that going? That's my question.
I will start where you ended.
Go ahead.
Must always be in a position of strengthening our party and growing our party. And so we invite persons to become, more party if they had not been in the past. And we understand that this is not a situation where, we those of us who are here are going to be here forever. And so we understand we must grow our party, and we invite people to come to our party. And we're quite excited that people have recognized that NRP is going in the right direction, and people are eager to be a part of our party. Now, with regards to the constitution of the NRP, it is exactly that. It is the constitution of the NRP. the NRP would have created that constitution. Of course, where we are at this point, no one anticipated that we would have a federal election. And the thing that I would want to clarify is the fact that NRP would have launched its candidates in preparation, yes, of a local candidate, of a local election. But there's nowhere where we say that we are local candidates or federal candidates. We are NRP candidates. And a federal election is thrown upon us. And so we have decided a federal election requires 3 candidates. And so we have looked within our party to ascertain how could NRP be in the best position to contest this federal election. Now, the NRP's constitution speaks to double representation. It speaks to being elected in one assembly and whether or not you can be elected in another assembly. And as it is right now, none of the NRP candidates who are contesting in the federal election are in the NIA. Because it is the NRP's constitution, the NRP has the ability to make changes to its constitution if it so deems necessary. Now, I think one of the concerns that may have led to that provision in the Constitution, which we are now seeing come to light, is that the CCM ministers have really been lazy and have not been performing. Because when you look at where what NRP had been able to do in the same federal and local assemblies compared to what CCM is struggling to do in either one, you recognize that it has a lot to do, and maybe that is why NRP got the slogan, performance matters. Performance matters. And so where we are right now, our constitution is intact. We're dealing with a federal election, and we would conduct election, and we would see what happens when the local election comes around.
Alan,
Okay.
I know you had your hand up for a bit. I don't know if you wanted to say something.
No, I ain't gonna bother. I'm gonna about that. I feel like I'm gonna get cuss, so I'm gonna still better one day.
Okay. Dr. Hodge, my dear brother has brought to my attention that there are some sustainable development goals that the UN has set out for 2030. We haven't heard anything about these goals. I think it's around 17 of them. I haven't heard anything about this from any of the other parties. I haven't heard it not from CCM. I haven't heard it from PLP, and I haven't heard it from the Labour or the PAM. So I don't know if your party has your eyes or you're aware of these development goals. The question is more geared towards an NAA perspective if you are elected in the NIA, but we're in the federal election portion. So I'm going to have to turn it to the federal part. If elected in the federal government, do you see yourself helping to introducing any of these goals that we need to meet by the year 2030? And go.
Well, Well, interesting that you mentioned that because the Sustainable Development Goals is really where NRP is heading at this point in time. And yes, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And if you look at the approach that we're looking with regards to the blue-green economy, taking Nevis forward, looking at the blue-green economy, would recognize that of the 17, the United Nations would also provide what are called success indicators. And so while you would want to be able to, I'm just pulling up the 17 right here because number 13 I think deals with climate change. Let me just pull this up right here. When you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, they provide a framework upon which you can determine whether or not you are meeting certain target goals, so to speak. And so we have said these Sustainable Development Goals must be used as a framework if you're trying to develop a sustainable economy. And that is why we can speak so much about the social, economic, and environmental goals of Nevis because this is what you would want to deal with under the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, look at the various ministries that exist. The Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Fisheries, Aquaculture, etc., Ministry of Sustainable Development. All of these ministries have programs that would be addressing the Sustainable Development Goals both in St. Kitts and Nevis. The issue is, and I think this goes back to a question that Reese asked earlier with regards to having your programs coordinated in such a way that you know exactly what would determine whether or not you're being successful in implementing a program. And so with the Sustainable Development Goals, having the indicators of success already outlined and aligned, it's like a big matrix table where you can see under, let's say under climate action, which is Sustainable Development Goal 13, you can look at that and see the different activities that you would need to do in order to help address climate change in your country. And it will also tell you where you'll be successful. Number 14 deals with life below water. And so when I spoke about preventing the plastic pollution and setting up a business around that, tying that into solid waste, then you can see, you will have your indicators of what you would need to be doing in order to protect your marine environment, to protect your fisheries, etc. And so you can just tick off as you go along. And so it's not as if you would be just doing activities and then not fitting into any framework. And the importance of using the Sustainable Development Goals as a framework is because this is something that was developed by the United Nations, and it has what we call international currency. So no matter where you are in the world and you're part of the United Nations, when you put together a project proposal and you say you need funding to implement an activity to address sustainable development goal, let's say it is number 4, which is quality education, then everybody can immediately go to Sustainable Development Goal 4, see what things are there, and say, well, okay, yes, this project seems like it would accomplish this goal, and then we're moving closer to being a sustainable nation. Now, I'll just share a moment with you that I can recall at the NIA, Nevis Island Assembly, just after the $12 million loan was taken to purchase a Wärtsilä generator. Now, you know the Wärtsilä generator, it's using fossil fuels. It's going to be, producing carbon into the air. And so, this is not something that would be sustainable. And so our good premier at the time said that We are moving closer to the Sustainable Development Goals because we are providing energy to every household. But what um, what he didn't recognize is that in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal, and the one that speaks to that is number 7, it speaks to affordable and clean energy. So because you can provide electricity to everybody in Nevis, does not mean that you are achieving the goal. Because one, it is not affordable, and two, it is not clean. And so you have to understand what the Sustainable Development Goal is trying to achieve. It's trying to achieve a country that is sustainable. And so these are the kind of things that we have to look at. And NRP would have said very early that we're using the Sustainable Development Goals as our framework, as our benchmark of success, because this is where we're going to be able to get funding and get grants to be able to carry out some of the projects that we would need. And so even when you look at the laptop program that NRP had and was disbanded by CCM, when you're looking at providing quality education, and when you're looking at bridging the digital divide in our schools, these are things that you get funding for because you're now connected to your sustainable development goals. And again, it has the global, it's a global language that everybody can understand. And so it's not as if I'm saying, well, I want to do something here in Nevis and people cannot relate to it. And so you tie your projects into this framework and you're able to make much more progress and a lot more advance. So, I hope that cleared it up.
Yeah.
So yes, you hear NRP speak about the Sustainable Development Goals a lot. We understand them. We have competence in different areas. I do not have competence in all, but other members of the team has competence in those areas. And like I said, it is already being done because we can see, for example, in St. Kitts, where they're looking at the solar energy. And in fact, there's a renewable energy policy in that, for the country. And if we were going to be guided by that policy, we would not be buying a Wärtsilä generator in Nevis in 2021. We would be trying to invest that $12 million in some solar panels and outfitting at least the small businesses. Like I said, I think that's one of the areas where we would need to start to have a dent. And then you look at your schools and you look at your hospitals and you get them on renewable energy, and then you roll out as much as you can. And so definitely the Sustainable Development Goals, these are definitely our our framework, our benchmarks of success. And so when we say that we have implemented plans, the whole world would be able to say, yes, Nevis is on a path to sustainability, not just Nevis, but St. Kitts, because understand now, you have St. Kitts making advance in solar energy, you have St. Kitts using, exploring desalination, etc. Nevis is now going back to diesel generator. So as a country, you're not making the strides that you really should to achieving your sustainable development goals. But these are the things that we would look at. And that is why I say, when you look at, the different political parties and you see how they are aligned and how they look at certain, issues, these are some of the things that will help to determine what may be the best fit for the development of St. Kitts and Nevis going forward.
Okay. I definitely think that. Alan, Reese, you had anything?
I wanted to ask a question. Do you have any specific plans for small businesses?
Well, I'm hearing a noise.
It's Alan's mic. Once he's muted, it goes away.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I mean, I've spoken a lot about, even rolling out energy with the small businesses. One of the things that we recognize is that when you have large developers coming to the country, they get a lot of concessions, they get a lot of tax breaks, etc. And the small businesses here, they have to pay taxes. They get, they don't get the same type of concession. And so we recognize that your small businesses, we say the small businesses are the backbone of your economy. We say that and we understand what it means. And so why have the small businesses struggling? High electricity bills, all of these, taxes, etc. And so we have to ensure that we can, when I say ensure, we recognize that we must provide support to the small businesses. And so even if it's a matter where you're going to look at waiving certain taxes, allow a period of time so that your small businesses can develop and get to a point of being profitable. These are things that we can look at to even reduce the cost of them doing business. Because we feel if you're able to, let's say, outfit a small business, whether it's a restaurant or something like that, let's say you outfit that business with renewable energy. And so now rather than having a $2,000 a month electricity bill, your electricity bill may be just $400 a month. Then that allows you to maybe hire someone who you can pay, an income to, and you can have money circulating in the economy in that way. And so when we look at small businesses, we must be able to support them. And when you compare the breaks, and when I say breaks, the concessions that the large developers bring to get from the government, there must be some provision where the small businesses can get breaks to bring in, even the equipment or supplies that they need to operate their business on some basis. I mean, we look at small businesses and you have someone working as a kitchen help, let's say it's a non-national, the work permit costs the same to that small business owner as the work permit would cost for a major, business, a major hotel, for example. And so, how do you expect a small business to be able to bring, help, maintain the diversity in the community and keep these people employed when they have to pay so much for the work permits? And so, there are different things and different expenses that we know small businesses have to endure. They don't get the waivers like the others, and so these are things that we would look at. And of course, like I said, starting with trying to minimize their expenses. And so, yes, certainly we do appreciate the small businesses and we would put programs in place to try to minimize their overhead, so to speak.
Okay. I want to ask a different question. This is a strictly NRP question. So, I hear you making the distinction between NRP and CCN, the dichotomy there. But I would also like for you to make a distinction between NRP now under your leadership and what you're trying to do versus, I mean, last election was historic losses. Dr. Daly, things didn't go well. Hector under Parry, NRP has not been going in a good direction for a long time. So, what are you doing now, personally, to change the direction? And what have you seen and learned in your short journey so far?
That's a loaded question. That's a loaded question. But this is what I would say. I do appreciate the fact that NRP has recognized that it was at a point where we needed to make some changes, and this is something that you see some political parties don't do that easily. And so, recognizing that we were at a crossroads basically as a party and needed to make some changes to keep the party going, I think was fundamental. Not necessarily so much because from inside NRP, but I think there was a lot of concern on the outside, and that is expected after us. And in fact, it was the last loss that we have that really, compelled me actually to get involved, and even at this level. And so I think for a long time, NRP was recognized as a party that really, was seen as a close knit family. It was seen as a party where, once you're an NRP, you are an NRP. And, some people felt that the party was not open to, to, um, to, to be more inclusive. And so these are some of the things that we have looked at and understanding. No, it's not so much, old NRP, new NRP per se, because NRP from its beginning really was founded on certain principles that we speak about: integrity and industrial building and inclusivity, innovation, these things. These have been the founding principles of NRP, and they always have been there. But of course, over the years, you would make some changes and some adjustments. I think where we are now, we would have been operating under the initial pillars or the initial paradigm. We tried to make a breakthrough with the geothermal policy, etc., that came about under the Paris period. And I dare say, if we were able to stay in government and advance that policy and move Nevis in that direction, I think we'd have seen a totally different Nevis today. But we were not able to get back into government. We were not able to pursue that. And so people started to get a bit, disgruntled and dejected. And so we really needed to have a change that would kind of, motivate people and bring a sort of new energy. And not only did the party bring me on as a new leader, but also it was the first time that you had a female leader in the party. And so I think by one, if we just had a new leader, I think that would have brought some new energy to the party. But I think after, people started recognizing that, well, here is somebody, she has a vision, where we want to take the party, and really have, what it takes to try to be as inclusive as possible. And like political parties, a new leader coming in, it's not going to be easy, because as they say, you have to prove your worth and that sort of thing. But I think it was the right time for a change for the party, and we started out with a new direction, so to speak. We had a lot of emphasis on the youth and what we want to be able to do for the youth, and open up to really acknowledge and appreciate the stalwarts of the party, those people who would have created the foundation for us, but also recognize that we need to open up our arms a bit more and recognize that the demographics are changing, and we have to really be able to represent, all the people of Nevis, and not just a few. So I think looking in that direction, I can say, people started to get excited. And then we went through the candidate recruitment period and brought in, like I said, quite a competent and diverse group of people who really can deliver on a number of different in a number of different areas. And so people, continued looking at the party and started saying, hey, this party, it looks like they understand where they want to go. They have a group of people who can really represent across the different areas. And we tried our best to, and we continue to set focus on what we set out to do. What we set out to do is to bring peace, progress, and prosperity back to Nevis. Not get caught up in a lot of things. People try to distract us, and people try to put things out there that would derail us. And so understanding that we have to stay focused. A lot of people are depending on us to I don't want to rescue Nevis, so to speak. And people have come out and supported and are happy for the change and really want to say that, NRP is at a point now where we can go forward. One of the things, we had a public meeting last evening, and what Mr. Parry, former Premier Parry, he was on the platform and he gave some remarks. And I would say, when you look at how NRP operates, our former leaders would be on any platform that we are on right now because we embrace them and they are part of the party and we can appreciate what they did for NRP. Again, drawing the difference between NRP and CCM. And you can see where former Premier Amory ended up in St. Kitts and did not have a place in the party that he founded. And so it is just a difference with regards to how NRP operates and being able to recognize and value those, stalwarts who came before us and recognizing that we need to open up and grow the party and get new people, associated with the party. I think that has really, done a lot for us. And so we continue to grow and continue to recognize what our, grounding, area is and keep going. And I think, the sincerity of our party goes a long way. We tend to be factual. We do not engage in making empty promises. We do not cover up. We do not walk around for 7 years and with secrets in our pockets and when we feel it's convenient, we come out and we say, oh, this has been a problem for the last however many years. And I think one of the things that a lot of people are holding the CCM government, holding their feet to the fire for is the fact that in 2020, they campaigned that this is the best, Timothy Harry is the best prime minister. This is the best relationship. Not one indication that there was a big ants nest inside the camp. And so to come now to scream and say that, oh, this was going on for so long, it just really speaks to the dishonesty of the CCM government. And all three of them said that they would follow their leader to wherever, and so you would assume all three of them are just as guilty. And so I think NRP brings that level of sincerity. Sometimes our honesty may get us in trouble, but I think people understand and recognize that we do have the best interests of Nevis at heart, and we will encourage persons to support NRP and give this true representation for the people of Nevis really feels like.
Alan, Tanya say had a next question, so I don't know.
Yeah, and they also telling me to ask both similar questions. I asked the premier question concerning bribery. I hear it often on the podium, and I would ask you, what will you do? What are the things? I don't want Nevis to turn into Santo Domingo, so that it's like you should be going to get a man of money, and then you turn up because people think that bribery is just going to be election time, but if we let it bleed into the society, that's where you get corruption. So I just want to know, with regards to the election, if you are elected, and even if you're not elected, because you could be a victim of this thing, what is your thoughts? What are you doing to combat the bribery situation we often hear of during elections?
Well, like you said, we often hear of the bribery during elections. I think the people of Nevis are beginning to recognize that you have a government that does not perform does not create employment opportunities, and at the time of election, they can provide some empty promises and get people to vote for them. What we recognize is that this is not the way to build a country. And this is where you want to have an easy way. And so when CCM can say they can campaign well and they can win elections, but they cannot perform in government, they cannot deliver. And I think the people of Nevis are seeing that because they're not concerned with performing, they're not concerned with results, that Nevis is going backwards. And so we have to try our damnedest to make sure that people understand that it's about developing and growing the country so that on election day, $500 does not seem like $1,000,000 to you. You must be able to be gainfully employed where nobody should be able to convince you that $500 today is sufficient to put them in a position to make millions and billions over the next 5 years. And so when we look at where Nevis is now, when we look that we are entirely dependent on the fair share, despite the fact that this is something that CCM campaigned about. Give us all 3 Cs. Let us go to St. Kitts. It would strengthen our hands. Can anybody take them serious at that? And so people have to understand that when you're voting for your livelihood. You're voting for your quality of life. You're voting for a party that is going to ensure that you can have job opportunities. You can have educational opportunities. You are going to be in a much better position going forward. You do not have to work 2 and 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. So the bribing comes in when people do not have the level of expectation from the government in terms of what the government is supposed to do. And when you can hear the Premier say he does not have to give account for $400 million, I mean, what kind of governance is that? Do you really feel that you're there just for your own self-interest and you do not have to explain to the people how you are helping them, how you're going to reduce the electricity bill, how you're going to help to ensure that the children can go to school and have a proper meals program? And so people, and to add insult to injury. Now, I am not a lawyer, but I would have heard a tape where our premier would have said, if anybody offers you money, take the money and vote against them, right? And so, with that being said, I am hoping that the people of Nevis will recognize that empty promises and lies does not advance the development of Nevis. And I would ask the people to vote for Nevis. And I keep saying, consider the state of affairs in Nevis on an government compared to under CCM government. And we will always have to say, under NRP, Nevis prospered. Nevis prospered. We had a better standard of living. People coming over from St. Kitts to work in Nevis. Vice versa, we're seeing the opposite now. Right? And so people must understand that this is what we need to do to ensure that we have good governance, to ensure that if we get $400 million from the federal government, you will be able to see where the $400 million went. And you will not be dodging and trying to just pull numbers out of the air. You'll be able to see. We got $400 million. This amount went to medical services. This amount went to pay interest on student loans. This amount went to affordable housing. These are the things that you would want to be able to see. And so, bribing during election is something that ought not happen because we know that it is not in the best interest for the people of Nevis now and in the future.
All right, so I have a question regarding bribery. One of the things we have heard over the years, and it's been going on for umpteen years, is we hear of political parties bringing people home to vote. Would that be considered a bribe?
I'll let Alan answer that question.
Is in my opinion, yes, but
I think,
it has not been tested
well, Alan, you know
because
how I feel.
there is no other time you are going to be offered a free ticket for one day to come in
I,
6 o'clock and leave 10 o'clock. Than that time, you understand?
I
My bigger question is do you think that there should ever be a circumstance where um let me ask it like this: should we have mail-in ballots? And conversely to that, if we are going to remain archaic and demand that persons come back home to vote, then
Well,
then should there be like should all the parties invest in something so that, because my big issue is I feel like it needs to be more of a navy circumstance than CCM people are come back, NRP people are come back, because I'm telling you, people gonna come back with NRP shirt on and vote for CCM, and people gonna come back with CCM clothes on and vote for NRP, and they gonna get people come back in clothes and then no gonna vote and they gonna go back home. So I just want to know if you think it should be a shit, like a pool thing that we all contribute to, or if it just should remain how it is.
well, I think this is where your members of the federal parliament, they speak all the time about electoral reform and constitutional reform, and every 5 years we come back and it's the same, waiting until midnight to get the votes counted, and it's the same whether people should come in or people can't come in. And I think that, I mean, you looked at Angola the other day when they had election and how early, the votes were counted. And there is enough going on around the region where, again, it's not about inventing the wheel. You just look at where you see elections being conducted in a manner that you would want to emulate, like this can work best for you, and then you go towards that direction. But you cannot sit in 7 years. Again, you campaigned on constitutional reform, electoral reform, but we come back here and not even the boundaries issue has been addressed again. And so it's really about what is the focus and what is the priority. And if these are the issues that really are important to people, then these are the things that we really need to put on the table. And so all of what we're seeing here really comes back to the fact that the priority of the ministers in government, campaign on one thing and then in between it shifted to something else. And so all of these have been neglected. So definitely electoral reform, these are things that we have to look at. We look at the list and what goes on with the list before election and all of these things. I mean, there's so much that can be done to make election in Nevis, more of a democratic process, and to make it something that is not, so stressful for the people. Imagine you as a political candidate and your party. You work so hard and you have, come up with programs that you think can really move your country forward. And then because on election day, as I said, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. You're able to convince somebody for a couple of $100 that it is better to vote a different way. And so, the democracy that we have come to know over the years, we're seeing it slipping away from us. And we have to get back to where, one man, one vote, and leave the bribing out of it and allow parties to be able to present their programs and present their plans and give the best party the opportunity to come in and represent.
I got you. Uh, you don't go on and go. I have a question for.
Somebody then asked me a question in the comments, so I've been wanting
Okay.
to respond to
Okay.
that.
I'm to the question.
As I was saying with regards to the flight thing, in the National Assembly election act, it said that, for example, a party could hire taxis, buses, to move people around. Nothing wrong with that. That is not considered as bribery. And I am only saying what my opinion is. And I'm asking if you have people in foreign jurisdiction and you get enough flight, a free flight to come and Nevis, only pan election day, only to vote for my party. What else could we call that? I would like to see it tested. Or let we legislate around it. And somebody had said if I don't want US people come back. I asked Janice if she think that the party should combine and all. Because as I said, I think it should be a Nevis thing. Let's do mail-in voting. I really looking for ways to get people to be involved, but more like kind of as a community thing rather than we say NRP come back, CCM come back, and Nevis people election. Yeah, got you.
Alan, check this out though, right? Because I'll tell you what I've noticed. Because the other day I was looking at the plane ticket from Miami to St. Kitts, and it's over $1,000. So the $500 somebody get, that's over $1,000. That's twice the dollar amount. I consider it a bribe.
Okay.
I also have said hard in saying that I don't believe, and you live where you live.
We're not going to dwell
just in our opinion, and it hasn't been tested.
Hold on. We have to keep the spotlight on the guests. So this is a different time, a different show, and I'm pretty sure Dr. Janice Hall is not Hall. Dr. Daniel-Hodge. Your name ties me up every time. Hodge. Is been campaigning, and she's probably ready to wind down as well. So, Reese, you had a question, you said?
Yeah, I had a question. She made a statement, and she said that CCM is great at winning elections, and that's what they campaign, and they always say that. Do you think that is something that NRP may want to emulate to actually win the election before? Because you have to win the election to be a government representative. So that's the first part. Winning the election is the most important part, and then you have 5 years to figure out the rest. Is that something you think that your party should focus a little bit more on?
Well, definitely. I mean, we have recognized some of our shortcomings, and we have identified some areas where we really need to, stop some gaps and just be, more organized in certain things. And one of the problems is identifying, why does this keep happening? But once you're able to sit down and kind of backtrack and see exactly what the problems are, then you're in a much better position to overcome that. And so we think this time around it's definitely going to be different, and we have the confidence that we have what is required. We put what we need to put in place, still putting things in place to ensure that we can be successful with the campaign and on election day as well.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now, Alan, and let me just ask, how are you feeling right now? Are you ready to retire?
For me, you asking me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I thought it was going to be a 2 hour.
Yeah.
It's gone a bit.
Yeah,
been out all night.
We gone over 15 minutes for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, what I would do, if you permit us, I had one question that was passed to me, and the person wanted it to be a closing question, but I'm going to let Alan and Reese, if they have one more question.
I don't have any more. I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
No, I don't have any more questions. Dr. Daniel-Hodge has answered all my questions in tremendous fashion. So I'm good.
Okay, so allow me to bring the final question on screen. And question: what is NRP's position on pursuing republicanism? I think I'm hearing myself too many times. Is this something they would support in the federal government? And that is the final question of the night.
And what an interesting question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have seen Barbados gain republic status recently. Now, when you look at taking St. Nevis from a federation to being a republic, the things that we have to consider, of course, is that the constitution that we have right now would not be the constitution under a republic. And the most I've heard about the republic status has come from PM Richards, excuse me, Honorable Sean Richards. I forgot what his title is. Um, and so, we have to consider if CCM and PAM are planning to join together, and this is one of the things that they would want to accomplish. I would say that this alone should be reason enough for them not to be elected, because they would have sat in parliament, again, like I said, for 7 years, and they could not do what is necessary in order to legislate the Charleston Accord. A simple act as that. Now imagine framing a new constitution under republic status. And I am not certain, based on the autonomy that Nevis has right now under the Constitution of 1983. I think the CCM government has failed to capitalize on the powers that we have under the Constitution and Nevis without having to be so reliant on St. Kitts. And so I am not certain that if we were to move to republic status, it has a lot to do with who would be responsible for framing that new constitution, and how are we going to ensure that Nevis is in a better position than it is. Nevis is in a very good position right now with regards to the authority and the autonomy that we have to shape the development of Nevis. It is just that the CCM has performed poorly. They have not executed a good portion hours that we have. And so going to republic status, we would have to ensure that Nevis is in no worse position. And I think I wouldn't be comfortable if this is something that PAM and CCM would want to do, because we know that CCM really does not have the best interest of people at heart. I don't know what their interest would be. Where I don't know, and so this is not something that I would want to encourage at this point in time.
Okay.
All right.
Watch it.
Yes, Adam.
I just want to say something. Everybody's saying that we use easy money and we'll have to get our own currency. Dominica, and I'm not talking about Dominican Republic. Dominica is a republic. They use Eastern Caribbean currency. So
That's a fact.
try get your all facts straight, please, please.
There are things we could do. There's things we could do. All right. So then this brings us. Please ask Dr. Janice Hall, our next PM back to the show.
Doc-
Okay. Of course.
Alan wrote that.
Huh?
I said it's got to be Alan who wrote that.
No, no, no. It was Ian
Ian
Nevis.
Taylor.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Hodge. Why am I calling you Hall? Dr.
I don't know.
Dr. Daniel-Hodge, I thank you. It was very enlightening, the discussion. It's always nice talking to an intellect. Definitely, your doctor title is shining, and really a breath of fresh air talking to you. And of course, you're always welcome to use our platform, and we're also going to use this time to invite some of the colleagues from NRP, to the platform. I would definitely love to have a talk with Dr. Patricia Bartlett. We have spoken to Rohan already. So, of course, we're going to make a public plea. We're going to use this time to make a public plea in the presence of the party leader. And
Definitely.
we just have to. And, you know, uh, I think I've said it. And, thank you. I'm going to let Reese and Alan say their piece and then let you say your final piece to the audience. And that will be it for the night. All right, Reese?
Definitely, Dr. Daniel Hodge, thank you for accepting our invite. We had to move things around, but to accommodate you, we'll definitely do that. It was a great conversation, hearing your plans and ideas. Amazing. And we'd like to let you know that it's an open platform. You're welcome back at any given point. And don't be a stranger. Don't be a stranger. Come back. All right. Thank you.
Alan?
Well, good night to everybody. Thank you all for inviting me over here. I hope I was able to contribute something to the discussion tonight of
Solid.
value.
Solid.
You know what I'm saying? And that is it. I hope everybody has a good evening. Miss Hodge, good luck in your campaign.
Yeah. Real talk is
Thank
still
you.
neutral, eh?
Thank you.
Uh, moving
Yeah,
on.
I wish the premier would luck too.
I
All of
just
them need luck.
I just
Oh
need
yeah, all of them need luck.
I
Yeah,
just
they
need
need it.
I just need to put it out there.
You better be
They
lucky
need
than
them luck.
skillful.
I wish give
Yeah,
them some rest too. They need some rest because I know they're gonna be
yeah.
very busy. Moving forward, okay.
Yes,
Dr. Hodge,
it's,
it's all you
yes.
now.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yes, and it's definitely a lot to be done, but we are committed. We are committed to the cause, and like I said, when you look at the NRP team, we took some time to make sure that we could get a team together that can deliver the representation that the people of Nevis would need. We recognize that we have had some failures in the advancement of Nevis under CCM. And we're at a point now where, because we have become so dependent on syncs, that the federal government, the federal election, maybe for the first time in a very long time, is very critical, very important. And we would want to ensure that everybody understands that this is not the time to stay at home. This is a time for us to come out and make a difference. So many people are asking for change. So many people recognize that we need to have change. And so I'm encouraging everybody to not treat this as just any other federal election. We must recognize now that without the assistance of the federal government, we're not able to pay our public servants. Without the assistance of the federal government, we're not able to do many of the things that the people of Nevis would have taken for granted, many of the things we were able to do for ourselves before. And so today I am saying that let us take this federal election seriously and let us ensure that we can have the type of representation that would put Nevis in a much position. NRP is always the party that believes performance matters. NRP is always the party that understands government to make sure that the people of Nevis can have a better standard of living and can have a better quality of life. So thank you to Real Talk for having me on here. I will be sure to let Dr. Bartlett know, if she's not watching, that she has an open invitation. And all of us at NRP, we're happy to come and share our ideas and our thoughts with you from time to time. And so I hope I have all of your support, and I know Alan is here, so we won't have to bribe him with a plane ticket to. But we do hope that all of you will be able to support the NRP in whichever way you can. There are many ways to support, and we do thank you for the opportunity to share a message here tonight. And I do look forward to coming back. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And that's it for the night, people. Thank you for joining in. And we are out.